Black women get this, Rebecca. And I think Latinas get this. But the problem still is these white women. And what they don't understand is what the right has done. They are on this whole thing, masculinity. Masculinity. Then you got one of the greatest wimps of all time, Mark Zuckerberg, who goes on Joe Rogan's show talking about, oh, they don't like masculinity in corporate America. That's also part of this. Just listen to some of this BS.
For me, it's just, I think a lot of the corporate world is like pretty culturally neutered. And I just think like having, you know, I grew up, I have 3 sisters, no brothers. I have 3 daughters, no sons. So I'm like surrounded by girls and women like my whole life. And it's like, so I think, I don't know. There's something, the kind of masculine energy I think is good. And obviously, you know, society has plenty of that, but I think corporate culture was really like trying to get away from it. And I do think that there's just something, it's like, I don't know, all these forms of energy are good. And I think having a culture that like celebrates the aggression a bit more has its own merits that are really positive. And
for me to stand in the middle,
that has been a kind of a positive experience for me. Just like having a thing that I can just like do with my guy friends and like, and it's just like, we're just like beat each other a bit. I don't know, it's good.
It is good. I agree. It's good. It just, I could see your point though about corporate culture. When do you think that happened? Was that a slow shift? Because I think it used to be very masculine. And I used to think it was kind of hyper aggressive at one point.
No, and look, and I think part of the intent on all these things I think is good, right? I do think that if you're a woman going into a company, it probably feels like it's too masculine. It's like there isn't enough of the kind of the energy that you may naturally have, and it probably feels like there are all these things that are set up that are biased against you, and that's not good either, because you want women to be able to succeed and like have companies that can unlock all the value from having great people, no matter, you know, what their background or gender, you know. So, but I think these things can always go a little far. And I think it's one thing to say we want to be kind of like welcoming and make a good environment for everyone. And I think it's another to basically say that masculinity is bad. And I just think we kind of swung culturally to that part of the kind of the spectrum where, you know, it's all like, okay, masculinity is toxic. We have to like get rid of it completely. It's like, no, like it's, both of these things are good, right? It's like you want like feminine energy, you want masculine energy. Like, I think that's like, you're going to have parts of society that have.
So I'm sorry. See, I had to stand up on that bullshit. Okay. So Rebecca, here's what Mark Zuckerberg is really saying. We need to go back to a world where men were crude, rude assholes in the workplace. We need to go back to a workplace where men could say nasty, despicable things, and they could do it because wasn't no women around. And really what this fool is saying is, oh yeah, let's go ahead and do this. Because see, those also were times when wasn't no black people around. See, what people need to understand is when you hear the phrase, make America great again, let's go back to a period when all y'all women were not in the workplace, y'all were at the house, laying on your backs, making babies, cooking the damn food, in the kitchen, and we men could be in the workplace and we could say the kind of stuff we want to and pull the kind of pranks, but damn, y'all showed up and messed every damn thing up. In fact, there was a story I saw yesterday. I wish I should have saved the story. I think it was in the Financial Times, where this banker said, now we can go back to the times where we can say pussy and not get canceled at work. That's what we're dealing with here. So but people need to understand, people really need to understand what's going on here. When you got the Republicans, okay, trying to defend Andrew Tate, okay, as some arbiter of greatness. That's what you're dealing with. You got Alina, whatever her name is, Hobbit, whatever her name is, talking him up. And so Tucker Carlson has been embracing this stuff. Josh Hawley of Missouri, all these Republicans. And so what we are dealing with and what Robert is talking about, people need to understand. What these people are focusing on, Charlie Kirks of the world, recruiting all these frat boys, these white men are mad that they no longer get to be the nasty, despicable assholes they were in the workplace.
You know, according to that movie, didn't Zuckerberg steal Facebook? Like listening to him spout utter nonsense and acting like, oh, because he leads Facebook, he leads Meta, that for some reason we ought to listen to him pontificate on American society and American culture. When here's the reality, and this is piggybacking off of what Robert was talking about. We know in the 40s and 50s, the United States government actually pushed propaganda on describing what American culture is. This is where we saw the rise of television shows like Leave It to Beaver. And we saw these things that if you watch Mad Men, it really showed, hey, this is what even the state of advertising was during that time and the American government at the time put so much money into housing for white people, created suburbs for white people, created this idea of American dream. It was very whitewashed because it was targeted, it was propaganda of showing this is what America is. It was it wasn't even sanitized because it was completely unrealistic. And so it's a lot of white men in this country who grew up with this caucasity dream of the American dream, like this caucasity viewpoint of it. And now that they are of age and they're seeing that that's not the world, that is not the reality of America, they can't deal with it. So they go on places like Joe Rogan and they crash out. Like personally, I appreciate the Mark Zuckerberg with the short hair because he didn't talk. We didn't hear him pontificate. Instead, we have this guy who I don't know if he's reinventing himself. I really don't know what's going on here. But you know what? If Joe Rogan could have a podcast and he could spot nonsense, you know what? This year, Roland, I'm going to start a podcast.
Well, first of all, Rebecca, you want to start a podcast? I got a whole damn network. So all you got to do is call a brother. So that ain't hard. But here's the thing. And see, I really need people to understand what's at play here, Gavin, because I don't think folk really get it. Okay, what you have going on, and the attacks on affirmative action. All the stuff about CRT, all this sort of stuff. I'm telling you, I wrote my book for a reason. When I said white fear, how the browning of America is making white folks lose their minds. Then you also throw in gender. What these people, what Trump represents, and this is where we got to understand why Donald Trump appeals to certain black men. See, we can't act like that don't exist. What we are dealing with are individuals who are so caught up in, we need a return to manliness. Manliness, men have gone soft. We have feminized the country. And we got to recognize that's what the right is doing. So when you have white women who vote like white men, and now you got these increasingly angry young white men who are mad because, damn, can't return to the good old days, and we can walk around and slap women on the ass in the workplace, and can we return to the days of just snapping their bras and groping them? That's really what these fools are talking about, okay? And let me just go ahead and say it, I just got to go ahead and say it, If y'all want to, that clip I played of Mark Zuckerberg, that's what we call 100% bitch-assness. 100% bitch-assness. That's you, Mark Zuckerberg. Because, oh my God, I grew up with two sisters, I don't have any brothers, and I have daughters, and I don't have any sons, and I grew up around women. Hey, dumbass. It was me and my brother and 3 sisters. I got 9 nieces and 4 nephews. I raised 6 nieces, me and my wife, at one time. And guess what? I'm not sitting here like, oh my God, I mean, what can I call some men? What happened? No, Mark Zuckerberg, you're 100% bitch-assness. That's your problem. And this whole deal of, oh my God, can we just inject some manliness into this? Please. Your issue with terms of your masculinity, that's your testosterone problem. And that's how dumb this is, Gavin. It's dumb. But people need to understand that this is a political reality that we are dealing with.
I think you're 100% right, Roland. You're right that this is the situation that we're dealing with, and you're right that there are pretty grave political consequences as a result of it. I think a big part of this past election was the fact that the Democratic Party, our nominee, Vice President Harris, sort of the whole Democratic Party platform really failed, I think, to resonate with, to your point, a number of working class, non-college educated, Hispanic men primarily, but we know there were some black men, no black women, but some black men who felt some sort of affinity to perhaps not what Donald Trump was saying, but perhaps how he was saying. I think it was a huge mistake that the Harris campaign did not try to penetrate more spaces with some of these young male.
But Gavin, that ain't the problem, bruh. She's a woman. She's a black woman. She could have penetrated those spaces. It would not have mattered. What the Trump campaign did was, the reason the Trump campaign was so aggressive at targeting men, because they actually believed they were going to lose more women. And so they had this target, hey, we got to increase the male support by at least 3%. And so the whole deal with Charlie Kirk and the right hitting the fraternities on the campuses and all this sort of stuff. But guess what happened? She didn't lose because they increased men. She lost because white women stuck with him. They voted for misogyny. And to Robert's point earlier, Biden voters set their ass on the couch, including a lot of black people. So that could have been overcome, but we have to understand what is at play here. The idea of make America great again, what the right is angry about. And this is what people have to accept. The 64 Civil Rights Act, the 65 Voting Rights Act, the 68 Fair Housing Act. Those three civil rights bills provided not just civil rights for black people, but what it did was it created civil rights for everybody else. And so Title IX was a direct result of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. And so these white men have been pissed off since 1972 because shit, these damn women, our wives, our daughters, our aunts, and our female cousins are now in the workplace. Why are these white men so pissed off with Kamala Harris? Because who's the most educated group of people in America right now? Folk who are like Rebecca, black women. So we got to understand, you can try, well, let me go in there, but let me just be real. I'm just going to put it out there. For Democrats to have a shot in 2028, based upon present conditions, they can't nominate a woman. See, we just got to go ahead and deal with the reality. This country is sexist as hell. And we saw it in this election.
That's true. I firmly believe, I think the Democrats, and this is not an overnight sort of solution, but I do think that the Democrats need to focus on putting forth positive messages of what masculinity means. I do think there are a lot of young men out there who over time have gotten very disenchanted with some of what they're hearing from the Democratic Party. I think that means the Dems have an opportunity then to say, don't listen to what Charlie Kirk, don't listen to what Joe Rogan. And Joe Rogan's not even a good example because he was a Bernie bro, right? So don't listen to what these men on the right, and Joe Rogan, are telling you. What they're telling you is not true. They're taking advantage of you because of this anger and this pain that you're feeling, but there's another way. It can't happen overnight, Roland, you're right, but I do think that if the Democrats think very critically and are intentional about penetrating some of those spaces, about connecting with some of those young men who stayed on the couch, I do think we can reclaim some of those voters.
Issue that here's what jumps out, Robert, again, that Democrats have to understand when we start talking about whiteness in culture. There is a strong belief, and the reason Kyle was very specific when he said, when they say DEI hire, these are straight white men. Because what you have is, you have an increasing number of straight men, not just white, who believe the Democratic Party is too gay. When you look at the transgender issues, all those, they didn't run $170 million worth of transgender commercials just because. That's also culture. And so when we see this DEI hire, the desire is we want to negate anybody that's not a straight white man, because what they are afraid of, and we got to understand, their numbers are declining, Robert. So what they need is the only way to truly connect with those white men. You're losing power. And so then what they do, Robert, they go, well, that won't work with black men. So what we'll then do is we'll run ads on radio to black men, transgender, 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 transgender. Oh my God, transgender sports, transgender sports. But when you look at the numbers, it ain't like, I ain't ever run into a transgender athlete. Okay, so the numbers who are playing on local, high school, whatever, we see what's going on here. But that's what they're doing. They saw the reaction of black men to Dwayne Wade's daughter. And they're like, oh yeah, we can tap into this. Because people didn't understand, those transgender ads were running on black radio stations in January, February, and March, before the TV ads started running, Robert. So the point that you've been making is people have to be smart enough to understand the game being played. And like my man Bill Duke said in the movie High Flying Bird, they invented a game on top of a game.
Well, to quote the prophet Mos Def, you start keeping pace, they start switching up the tempo. And what we're seeing right now is the kind of Empire Strikes Back moment for lame dudes. When you look at Zuckerberg, if you look at Elon Musk, if you look at all these people in the Trump orbit, Stephen Miller, etc., these are dudes who ain't got no game. These are dudes who could not pull a woman without money. These are men who have been overlooked their entire life. Look at the quote from Vivek Ramaswamy when he said, "Well, you want to venerate Zach and Slater over Screech. Well, you want to demonize Steve Urkel." These are those guys who grew up to be lames. And no amount of money can unlame you. You can have all the billions you want. You are still lame. And what they have depended on for the last several hundred years since the Victorian era is that, well, my money and women's economic dependence on me will give me the type of leverage in the dating market for me to be able to continue reproducing. This is why Elon talked so much about this projectization of white people needing to breed more, because his belief is that them as the ruling, wealthy, white elite class should be repopulating the earth with more people of their very nature. At the end of the day, none of these white billionaires out there, if you took the money away and you stood every single one of them up against me, ain't nobody choosing none of them over me. That's just the reality of the situation. And that's what threatens them. That's what they are afraid of. You take the money out of the situation, I pull all their women. And that's just what they understand. So the only way that they can keep up is by changing the rules of the game, by changing who has the opportunities. You take economic opportunity away from white women, then you make them dependent upon the white man again, then that means Elon and Zuckerberg and all these other guys go to the top of the heap again. You give white women the ability to make $500,000 or $1 million based on their intellect and their abilities, and not having a whole bunch of kids running around because they have the right to gender or to bodily autonomy, then all of a sudden they ain't worried about them. They can date and marry who they want. So the reason they talk about all this DEI and affirmative action, et cetera, is all of a sudden their money can't buy them what they want in life anymore because other people aren't desperate. So when we're looking at these people who are dealing with this massive lame agenda, it's not this thing of saying, well, we need to change our messaging to attract more lames to the party. We have to attack what the real problem is, which is these 26 states have passed voter suppression laws. We have to organize at the grassroots level to make sure we're getting those state and local officials in office so they can change these laws. One thing I'll say that Trump does better than Democrats. If you are running for county commissioner in Brunswick, Georgia on a MAGA agenda, he will bring an entire clown car, a circus to town to campaign for you. If you get on TV and make a fool out of yourself to campaign for Trump, guess what? You'll be the assistant secretary of state for watermelon or something. Who knows what he gives these people appointments for? Democrats tend to get elected and close the door behind them. Forget the people who sent them there. Have the gatekeepers in charge as opposed to dealing with the issues of the people that sent them into office. This is why 4 years later, we are sitting here a week before, a couple of days before Trump gets in office saying, well, will Biden pardon the black people like he did Hunter? We have to start exercising that political power because at the end of the day, I refuse to allow these lames to run the country. We got to turn the country back over to real men who know how to talk, know how to walk, and know how to lead, not these sniveling dweebs like Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro and all these other lames who could never pull a girl out of a wallet in their lives. So unless we are willing to cede this country over to the lame agenda, we're going to stand up and organize and fight against it.
And the reality is here, real men, real heterosexual men, ain't nobody scared of a woman. Ain't nobody scared of having a woman in the workplace. Ain't nobody scared to working with a woman. Ain't nobody scared to follow a woman. The first boss I had was my grandmother. Okay? Mm-hmm. That she, in terms of a job. And when I went to the Austin American Statesman, Maggie Balow was the editor-in-chief. Then when I went to the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, Mary Jo Meisner was the chief. Hell, actually, even before that, my first news media job where I got paid, guess what? Sincere Messiah Giles was a publisher of the Houston Defender. So I ain't never been afraid to work for no woman. But when you a little bitch-assness, like, oh my God, we need the masculinity. We need to be able to, find ourselves. That's just some BS. That's all it is. All right, folks, got to go to a quick break. What, Robert, you go add one thing real quick?
Rebecca,
Roland.
Who was? Go ahead.
What was I going to say really quickly is it's not even just real heterosexual men. Real men, period. Real men, period, are not afraid and intimidated by women. And that's regardless of what your sexuality, your orientation is. But this is also about authenticity. So even to Robert's point, we got the revenge of the nerds. We have all these white men with imposter syndrome, and they cannot compete. And that's what the real issue is. Even going back to your book with White Fear, they're not able to compete. They do not have the skill set because they've always been allowed to fail up. Even like Andrew Clyde, who we talked about earlier. I mean, his leadership right now in Congress, he's on the Congressional Chicken Caucus. Like, what are we talking about?
Well, in fact, if I wanted to, I could pull up a photo of how his little punk ass was running scared on January 6th when they were storming the Capitol. But then, of course, now he's trying to protect the January 6th defenders. By the way, we talk about a real man, a real black man, a real heterosexual black man. Yeah, I'm rocking his hoodie. The wife of Bill Russ sent this to me last year when they were celebrating his 90th birthday. And so this is the back of the hoodie. And so I just had to be wearing it today. And so again, this is a perfect example. Bill Russell, yeah, that was a real brother. A real brother.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. And right now we're accepting investors in our $17 million round to revolutionize the future of social media. Today, for just $399, you can own 60 shares of stock in Fanbase at $665 a share. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest today. While the big platforms have grown too massive and disconnected from their users, Fanbase is building a platform where creators and users truly come first. We've already raised $4.8 million from everyday investors who believe in this vision, and now you can join them. This is your chance to invest in a social media tech company with over 1 million users that is disrupting media by allowing anyone to reach all of their following and monetize their content from day one. The market is changing, big platforms are failing to serve their users, and Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now. Invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the future of social media.